I would have been.
All right, I will call this Public Works Committee meeting to order, and we'll go ahead and get started with Resolution 1238 by Council Lady Dow and others, amends a participation agreement between Metro and Century Farms LLC through Public Works for the construction of access roads connecting Cane Ridge Road and Old Franklin Road to the I-24 exchange at Hickory Hollow Parkway. And I would move approval.
Second.
I saw Mr. McConnell. He's out the hallway.
He's right around the corner.
Okay. Not that he has to be here, but
Can we ask just, we've seen this before, how are we amending it in summary? Mike, or others?
Cost increase.
In summary, the original agreement had Century Farms and Metro government participation to fund the engineering services for the interchange at Hickory Hollow, and also to cover the cost of engineering services and construction for the connector roads. This amendment also, now we are partnering with TDOT. Matter of fact, the companion legislation is 1241, where we are now partnering with TDOT to add a little construction funding to the interchange. So that changes the participation agreement for the previous agreement with Century Farms. Now we'll be also sharing the cost for some construction on the interchange project.
So by little funding, you mean $12.3 million?
Well, the $12.3 million, $11 million of that is coming from the feds through the MPO, and we'll be sharing the 10% cost, which is 1.2. So really, Metro's cost is only $615,000.
So from an MPO standpoint, what are kind of the standards for their determination on whether, because when I think about MPO, I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of late breaking, and we've added this funding to this project, but what's not going to get funding because the MPO is funding this?
Well, we were very fortunate because the MPO, there was a lot of obligated money that didn't get expended, and so they informed us of this back in April. So we were able to apply for some of that excess obligated money. And so they're going through the process now of having that amended into their TIP, and that endorsement is going, like it's going through the public comment period now, and the endorsement is scheduled for June 20th. And so with the excess money, they had the $11 million, and they agreed to add that to this TDOT project as block grant funds. So there's a 90%, 10% match on these interstate projects. So the MPO will be providing the 90%, and we'll be providing the other 10%. So that's how the process works. It goes through their amendment process, and that's what's going on right now at this point.
Okay. So there's this project in particular, but their amendment process as far as the MPO goes, are there a variety of other things they're considering?
A variety of other things.
Or just, when you say they're amending their TIP, or you said there were dedicated funds that weren't used and
Yes,
so forth?
there are other projects in other counties where they are amending the TIP to add funds to some of these other projects. For example, the city of Gallatin, Rutherford County, Windsor County, they have other projects too in the TIP that need additional funds. And so Metro's not the only municipality that's in need of additional funds for a project. But what they do is when they go through the amendment process, it has to go through the technical committee for endorsement. And I sit on that committee. We did that back on May 6th, June 6th, I think. No, I'm sorry, May 6th. And so now it's going through the process where the public comment period is going on right now. And the policy board, which is the executive board, the mayor sits on that policy board along with other mayors.
Who represents the mayor on that board?
Mayor Bradley actually comes to those meetings. And so, like I said, it's an amendment process. It's about a 30-day process. And on June 20th, they are expected to endorse the amendment for not just this project, but other projects that are listed as well.
Can you send this committee just a link to what that process is going on, public comment, what projects are considered? I would just be interested to understand, too, as far as dedicating MPO funding, or I mean, is that just kind of set at the federal level as to how those funds can be dedicated? Or do we, as our regional MPO, set any standards as to complete streets, multimodal, any of that kind of stuff, right? Because I would just be interested to see as we amend and do, are we widening roads, doing off-ramps? Like, what are we doing with that MPO money that's in multimodal?
There are a variety of projects that they fund.
Great.
They have, they're transit-oriented projects, there are multimodal types of projects. And so this being an interstate project, that's the type that's going on here. So they have different types of projects that they fund.
Okay, I think it'd just be helpful for this group to understand the MPO a little better.
Can I add to that? Relative to multimodal, this project does support multimodal functions.
I remember you sharing that, or that being shared with the committee early on, so thank you, for
So,
reminding.
Council Lady, the $615,000 from Metro is general fund?
There are funds that have been obligated at one point. They were in a local government investment pool for another project. The project has been completed. There was some excess funds left over. So the money from that fund is going to be transferred into a new local government investment pool with TDOT to pay our portion. Century Farms is going to pay their other portion of that amount.
Okay, so the local government investment pool is set up. We were putting money in projects, and then that has collected the balance. How much is that pool?
I have all of that listed back at work. I can get that to you if you want me to. So we only contribute the portion that we're expected to match whenever the state actually does the project. So if they come in under budget and our portion comes in under budget, then we take that money and we'll either transfer it to another project that has come up, or they will send the money back.
So once upon a time, it was sent out from the general fund. You have
Yes.
surpluses from those projects. It pools
was-
up into this pool,
Right.
which is then reallocated by a governmental process or by Public Works or by
We have to file paperwork with the state and explain where we want it to be reallocated or if we want the money to come back into the general fund. So the state has a whole process. Once we've sent them the money, then we have a whole process we go through with the state in order to get that money either returned or reallocated.
Okay, and this is in the millions, in the tens of millions? There have been a lot of projects over the years.
No, I mean, most of the time this is rare. Most of the time we're having to contribute more instead of having some left over that we can reallocate. So,
Okay.
but I can get you exactly how much is there and what projects it's for.
Oh, I'd be grateful. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I'd like to see that listed.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask you all to support this. We have an issue connecting with 24, and a lot of the cut-through traffic in the southeast is mostly related to the fact that there are no good ways for people that are coming from Williamson County, Rutherford County, to navigate to downtown. And they start exiting 24 because there are no good ways to exit 24 farther down, so they'll do it early on and they'll start cutting through all our neighborhoods. So this is a really good connection into 24 at a place that is going to be very useful and help us with some of the overflow traffic. So I'm asking you, I'm begging that you guys support it.
Because I
No
think,
need to back.
because I think that, people, with IKEA saying they're not coming, there's a lot more going on out there than just IKEA.
Absolutely.
A ton more. So this is, I know, going to be a huge project for Nashville, particularly Southeast. So
Mr. Chairman, can we name the interchange after the council?
I'll humbly accept it.
humbly jump at it as soon as you announce it.
Unless people get stuck on the second, I have to take that damn bed name.
I think you would welcome people from Rutherford County cursing your name. I think you may actually like that. Yeah.
We do it now, so why not?
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And we recommend approval. All right. Resolution 1239 by Councilman Bednay approves and authorizes the execution and acceptance of an easement agreement with the state of Tennessee committing easements for sidewalks, bus stops, traffic signalization, and drainage to the Metro Government Metro Transit Authority for use in the Nashville Transit Signal Priority System Project. Councilman Bednay.
I move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
I will just say, as someone representing a district where this comes through and having looked at specifically bus rapid transit programs for years now. This is a nice way to use federal support to advance the cause of transit without, knowing that we are going to be in some form of status quo budget for probably a couple of fiscal cycles. This lets us advance the cause without delay. So I'm strongly supportive of this.
Absolutely.
Can I ask what this segment is? I mean, it says Murfreesboro Pike, but from where to where?
So I can speak to that. We're putting in new crossings at Donaldson and Murfreesboro.
Can you share who you are, please?
Oh, I'm Andrew Smith. I'm with Metro Public Works.
Thank you.
We're putting in an altered stop at Murfreesboro and Donaldson and putting in pit crossings at that intersection. This will connect an existing bus shelter to the new pit crossings. And as it happens, the shelter straddles a right-of-way line and the sidewalk will cross out of the right-of-way and onto state property. So they've agreed to give us the easement to do this.
Great. And then, so just as far as the whole transit signal priority system, that's running what, the full distance of Murfreesboro Pike, or from where to where?
Murfreesboro to Bell to Hickory Hollow.
Bell to Hickory Hollow.
So
Okay.
It's a big,
Yeah,
big
great. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We recommend approval. Resolution 1240 by Councilor Vercher and myself approves Amendment 1 to a grant from TDEC to Metro Public Works to assist in the annual operation, maintenance, and facilities improvement of a household hazardous waste collection facility. And I would move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We recommend approval. Resolution 1241 by Council Dow and others approves an intergovernmental agreement between TDOT Public Works for the acceptance of all phases of work in connection with the construction of interchange modification on I-24 East at Hickory Hollow Parkway. And I would move approval. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We recommend approval. Ordinance 1191 by Councilman O'Connell, authorize the Nashville Symphony Association to install, construct, and maintain underground encroachments in the right-of-way located at 1 Symphony Place. Move approval. Second, we have an amendment, so we have a motion to second on the amendment. All those in favor,
I'm happy to move these.
the amendment just changes it from an entry canopy, below grade electrical vault, and a patio dining area to just a monument sign.
That's correct.
So, all right.
This is an underground encroachment, not an aerial encroachment.
No patio dining area?
Councilman, we have to have, I think, our overall citywide approach to encroachments has to be equitable. I think our diversity is our strength.
How do you feel that he called it just a monumental sign? I mean, it just seems diminishing.
I mean, has somebody been keeping kind of a record to make sure this is equitable in terms of what's aerial and what's underground?
I'm sure we could ask either the clerk or our office or.
That calls for a legislation.
All those in favor of the amendment? Aye. We put on the amendment. All those in favor of the ordinance? Aye. Say aye. And we recommend approval as amended. That's all we need is more legislation on Ordinance 1192 by Councilman Pulley, authorize the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for purposes of Public Works Project Belmont Park Trace sidewalk improvements. And we have a letter asking for approval, so I would move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Myself.
We recommend approval. Ordinance 1198 by Councilman Rosenberg authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for purposes of Public Works Project Bell Forest Circle sidewalk improvements. And I would move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We recommend approval. Ordinance 1194 by Councilman Kendall and others authorizes the acquisition of certain right-of-way easements, drainage easements, temporary construction easements, and property rights by negotiation or condemnation for purposes of Public Works Project 23rd Avenue North sidewalk improvements. And we have a letter asking for approval, so I will move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And we recommend approval. That is the end of the agenda. Two things. I know Council Lady Henderson's got one of them. We filed scooter legislation, calling the Mark Sternovit, Cleanup Act. Sorry, I don't have. Sorry.
Go on. Get it out.
So it's on first reading today. It's scheduled for second reading at the second meeting in June. We're a little busy this month, so we'll move the second reading until the first meeting in July at least. But get in your stuff to, Terry's working on it. So I don't know whether it's to, I guess, myself, Terry, Aaron and Mary Beth. Who else is included in that? I know Council Lady Berkeley Allen and Councilman Anthony Davis is also working on it. So is that about?
Peter Bird.
Peter Bird, I'm sorry, Peter Bird, yes. So if you all have suggestions or ideas, take a look at that legislation. I just try to get something filed as soon as possible to start the conversation on it because we're kind of inundated by birds right now. So.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is going to be kind of an interesting conversation because I think are there two pieces that may be coming? I saw yours, and then it looks like there's something maybe.
Councilman Rosenberg has one, I think, just on dealing with the elbow pads and arm pads and I think tape players and stuff.
Not the regulatory framework for allowing.
Yeah, like it's like
Inline skating or something.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't sure. So I guess the question is, since this is kind of a new thing, is it helpful to have a longer meeting so we can actually have kind of an understanding of what this is all about? I mean, I know we're getting lots of emails from it, but maybe make sure that the clerk gives you some extra time so we can actually spend some time trying to figure out what this thing is.
Potentially, I think once we get in, I mean, I've gotten some feedback from some of the companies, both Bird and Lime, but I think once we start getting the feedback of, I mean, maybe magically everybody will agree on everything and just fly through. I don't think so, but it's possible.
I think an agenda item for that meeting is going to need to be about autocorrect algorithms for the word dockless.
Yes. I've been terrified of this spelling. I am so terrified of that. Anyways, but
you.
Possibly, yes.
Ready.
So I just want to let everybody know that's the plan that I've got as a least. If anybody else has anything that they want to get it to Terry and myself and Mary Beth, Aaron, and Peter Bird. So that's.
I have a question for you, and this is not a joke.
Serious.
You're really serious about naming an interchange after you. It's not a joke to you. Sorry.
Actually, I was honored, but regarding this bird thing, is the legislation you guys discussing going to cover other forms of transportation or just this particular one?
Dockless vehicles, which right now are scooters, but could include regular bicycles and electric bicycles.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Or, inline skates if you want to have dockless inline skates.
And they include segways as well.
Okay.
And to that point, and Mr. Jameson might be able to step in and clarify this, right? In a brief meeting that I attended recently where this topic came up, right, a member of the Metro Police Department, started, so we've had an issue, for instance, downtown with people riding on crowded sidewalks at frequently higher speeds than you see people cycling, and most cyclists are on the street in urban areas anyway. But moving them to the street right now is problematic because I don't believe state law recognizes them as vehicles per se, Mike, is that correct? Correct. Right, so if they're not legally allowed on the sidewalk and we don't have the authority to recognize them as vehicles on the street, I think that's, to Jim's point, maybe this is worth a little bit more discussion.
I see them everywhere now,
That's curious because they're not supposed to be.
I understand. I'm trying to be careful with them, but it would probably be helpful to understand a little bit more about where they came from and what are they doing and where are they? I assume they came from a manufacturer, but they came from storage. That's right. But all of a sudden they showed up.
Well, having been, you were in the last council, and we, the beginning of the shared economy, when Uber and Lyft wanted us to address the request, it can become a really charged subject. So that's why I was asking if we were going to include other ways, because I don't want to have to start going all over again every time somebody creates a new form of flying vehicle or whatever. So I just want to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible on this.
Well, that's what I think, at least my worry is like Airbnb or like short-term rentals or ride sharing is I'd rather be more restrictive on the front end and then loosen up so we don't have a situation we have now with like short-term rentals where it's you try to put the toothpaste back in the tube kind of after the fact. So
Thank you, Chair.
yeah. All right, anyway, Council Leaders.
Yes, yeah. So at last Public Works Committee meeting, we did pose questions to the Public Works Department about renegotiating the sidewalk contracts. And so I appreciate Ms. Wallstrom got back in touch with us in advance of the Public Works Budget Committee so that we could ask questions related to that. Can committee members remind me, were you sent that from the council office, Ms. Wallstrom's reply? I'm not going to read it into the record at this point, but do we recall about
I thought so, but I can't remember.
I feel like it was forwarded to the committee.
I'm pretty sure it was, but.
The contract for design and inspection with Civic expires at the end of August. So, they're entering with the procurement department into an RFP process. And so Ms. Wallstrom's kind of outlined that for us per our questions. So I just wanted to share with the public that you have responded to those questions. And then additionally, we also asked at last meeting if you all could kind of come up with an action plan for a path forward on Demonbreun and those bike lanes. And so, what is your plan and intent? I mean, I spoke with Mr. Byrd and Mr. Radinger. I think they have ideas, community shared ideas. We know there's on-street parking, lanes up the middle, all that, but there's just a lot of stuff out there, right? And so I think the community's been pretty clear that that is a really challenging and unsafe area that needs attention. And so I just wanted to understand from a timeline perspective, what is the plan to fix that?
Well, the shortest term thing, the quickest thing we can do is V-book enforcement. But as you probably know, it's a difficult task on Demonbreun. It's a situation where you have a very high frequency of blocked bike lanes, but the duration's really short. So an Uber driver will pull up, let passengers out, they're going to Pedal Tavern or wherever they're going, and they're off again. FedEx, UPS, same way. They pull up just long enough to make a delivery, block the bike lane during that time, and they're off again. So in the short term, we can try to do that. What that almost really literally means is you keep one of 5.
Someone needs to be stationed there, right? We're not going to try to do it whatever we need to do as a committee to coordinate between the police department and y'all's department, that is a persistent issue. The community has been crying out about that for months. So, Director, we can't keep saying we're going to try to fix it, right? We can rework the curves, right? And say this is, Uber stops here. We can put the bike lane in the middle.
That's some of the range of options, but it's a funds and resources issue.
Understood. But I think what the community wants to hear is that we're going to prioritize that from there are things that we can do now, right, that cost nothing. We can repaint curbs and we can coordinate with Metro Police to have somebody out there
Well, the
doing
latest
intentional
estimate
enforcement.
on just trying to reinforce the fact that there's no parking on bike lanes, signs, pavement marking decals. We have a plan for all of that. It's about $50,000, which, it's not nothing, but it is a lower cost.
So you do have a plan for all that?
We do have a plan. I've got design plans for that. We also have more of a concept plan for the bigger fix, the long-term fix that we think is a more sustainable way to do it, which is move the bike lanes to the inside. They can't get blocked.
What's the cost of that?
It's a much more expensive proposition, and it depends on how far we take. And the other thing that we have is we have redevelopment activity in the old Deja Vu property that we're looking at. Where do we end that project with redevelopment coming there? So I don't have a firm number on that one, but there's also bike signals that have to go in as part of that one. So it's a much bigger scale project.
I'm going to defer to Councilman
Well,
Conklin.
and I guess,
It's in his district.
but I'll
so.
say to that end, I think Demonbreun Hill is really just an example,
Emblematic of
right?
the whole- yeah.
The network where we don't have fully protected infrastructure is just challenging right now.
Yeah, understood. you know, I mean, I do want to appreciate the good work that your department is doing and staff is doing to get a comprehensive network, right? But when we have an area like this, that there is just so much repetitive, I mean, it is dangerous to cyclists, right? So if we just keep saying like, you know, I mean, I think we all sense the community's frustration, right? That there's some really obvious problems there, and that we keep saying, well, maybe we'll do this, and we can look at it, or we'll try. Like, what this community wants to hear is specifically like an action plan. Like, tomorrow we are going to call the downtown precinct and effectuate some enforcement. I mean, how do we?
We can ask that. I don't have any more I can do from a police standpoint. We can have one of our 5 officers dedicate to that all the time. I mean, we can commit to that. I'm not sure if that's what we want to do, you know, and I mean, we would.
So by your 5 officers, you mean the parking enforcement officers that are employed by Public Works?
Correct.
What do those 5 officers do every day?
They patrol all of downtown, midtown, special enforcement areas that we've got requests from council members.
So can one of those officers be stationed on Demumbrian intentionally but randomly in a pattern to address this enforcement issue?
I have a problem with that because there are other parts of the city that also need enforcement. So if we want to fix this, then we should give the funding to hire more people for them to do enforcement.
I absolutely understand that, but we say that year after year after year, and in an effort to be equitable and spread everything wide, we do not address key problems that the cycling community is telling us it's very dangerous. They have told us that they want focus there, so why can't we respond to that?
Well, why is people in Lenox Village not being able to go across the street because there are cars parked on the corner? I mean, we have problems citywide with parking. I submitted a request to have funding for an additional parking enforcement. I understand and I feel your frustration, but we in the council are responsible for not adding to the funding of this enforcement.
Yeah, you and I tried for the budget process to add that, and so we are in a neutral year. So the fact that we are sitting here and we can't say to the community that we are going to address your concern is just unacceptable to me. Like, we have got to figure out a better way to, you know, just, I mean, we can still be equitable, right? But it's the same thing we struggle with, right? Where when we request speeding enforcement, when we request bike lane enforcement, there are hot button areas that we all know from an engineering standpoint or just from a traffic standpoint are problematic, right? So we can still be equitable. We can still address the Lenox Valley, but we have to be intentional about making these rotations. I mean, this is a life safety issue. So, you know, where are the areas of most priority? Like, this is just basic process management, right? Where are the most dangerous areas and put the enforcement there?
I would like comment on that. I understand your frustration, but it was not 2 years ago that we did add another parking enforcement because it was needed.
Right.
And I would just hate, as Councilman Bedney states, there's areas of my district that I would love to have some sort of parking enforcement for cyclists or just people in wheelchairs. But to tie up an employee for a specific area and that causes them not to do what we hired them to do.
How do we know that they're doing what we hired them?
Well,
I mean, like, how many tickets are they writing? Where are they working?
There's other avenues also. I know you're expressing that asking Public Works, and it's in Councilman O'Connell's district. But on issues like that, I've contacted the police, personally, and their COCO officer has been very cooperative, and they'll send a patrol car out there for a particular time period to try to let them know that they're going to be. I know this is getting into details that we don't need to talk about, but I'm saying there's other avenues besides. I just don't feel right that it should tie up one of our.
Understood, but I think we all likewise do that for our districts. We know the problem areas of bike lanes and whatever, and we call the COCO and we ask for it, and they respond.
And I understand your frustration for wanting to get it one step further, but however, we would all like to get it one step further in our district.
I guess what I would say is, I am of the impression, and I may be wrong, that there is, at this time, sufficient enforcement if we are intentional, right? And we set a system of kind of random but intentional, rotating around to these key areas at obviously peak times. Like, I just really think we have to be more intentional with the resources that we have. So I would be interested to know, and if you can please report back to us, how much enforcement is being done on not just Demumbrian Hill, but and otherwise. I mean, how are those 5 officers spending their time? What citations are they writing? Because the community has we just keep doing this in a reactionary way, Councilman Pridemore, with all due respect, and it's not sufficient.
Okay, just think of all the problem areas that we have, though. We'll get back to you.
Okay. So your officers, though, will know what those problem areas are, correct?
They do.
They do. Okay, great.
I mean, think of Lower Broadway.
Absolutely, understood. I mean, I know it is complex and problematic, and we have 532 square miles, but if we don't show the community that we're trying to be intentional in this regard,
Well, every one of them that's received a parking ticket, let them think that whether they're intentional, they're really working. I mean, the ones that receive the parking tickets know that they're working because they're being charged with a violation. But I mean, it's just like any other. There's only so many policemen, so many firemen. There's only so many public works employees that can do, or water and sewer.
again, from a priority standpoint,
But is that something we need to be doing? Is there involved in their day-to-day operation? I mean,
No, I don't want to be involved in their I don't want to be micromanaging that.
Councilor Henderson.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to interject and say I agree with Councilor Henderson, because I think what you can do is target those problem areas and be intentional about your enforcement, just like what she's saying. You're not expecting them to be everything to everybody and to be out there for everything. But I think she is on point in saying that because you know where the problem areas are and where the frequency is, hone in on that.
Council, I agree with you. And earlier, before you got here, we sympathized with her and agree with her. However, is it the right way to utilize the resources?
I don't see how that's not, because you're prioritizing.
Are they not already doing that? I mean, we don't know.
No, but that's what we don't know. We're asking
You don't
them.
think that they're...
They do have a record, sorry, Chair. They do have a record of where they go. So we can ask them to share that information with us.
And also, too, with all due respect, from a hierarchy standpoint, there's you overstayed your parking meter, and there's you're in a bike lane. Now somebody's going to have to divert out into the road, and they get hit by a car. Like, it's different.
Again, I understand you. I sympathize with you, and I agree with you. But again, it's back to the resource.
Right, and I just think it's incumbent upon us to, if we want to make the case for more resources, which no doubt we'll see, but we really can't know that, right? I mean, what we hear from the community is we're not seeing the results of the enforcement. So I think, it's with y'all to share the good work. It only gives you the opportunity to share the good work that you're doing, right? If you can communicate back.
Councilor Johnson,
Yes.
and I'll add something.
I think we as a body, a few months ago, requested Public Works identify the dangerous intersection and so forth. And with that report, I think we would like to request to come up with how to solve those danger. What's the plan to improve those intersections? ABC. So identifying and solution. If you can give us that report and then prioritize based on the score of the danger. So that would be the best way for us to approach, not micromanaging your department.
And Chair, I wonder too, as to what Mr. Hannon spoke about the design solutions for Demumbrian, Mr. O'Connell. I mean, that's your district. I mean, what's the best way to share that with the community? There's near-term 50,000 repainting things, and then there's...
So we have some very specific scenarios, right? For instance, at the Rhythm, there's basically what would ordinarily look like a lay-by, but it is currently in use as on-street parking. I mean, one quick thing would be to actually allow that to be a loading zone for that building or ride-sharing drop-off or whatever, because a lot of times what you'll see now is because that is metered parking, other vehicles will just cruise in, for instance, to the bike lane right out in front of the Rhythm. I think there are some case-by-case things that are short of a full-blown redesign, but I do think this question of of looking at enforcement in the most acute areas is one we ought to be weighing pretty seriously.
And I think, if we're tactical, right, with curb painting or this, the one at that particular building, like, that frankly shouldn't cost $50,000, right? To have somebody engage with that building and say, we're going to sign this or paint this or do that. I mean, just, what's the, kind of in the spirit of being, tactical urbanism, like, what's the kind of quick?
And we do that.
way to
We
do that?
did it last week at Porter and Greenwood, which we had another blow up, where this was where they were putting plungers in the bike lane as makeshift delineators to keep traffic out of it. We work with those business owners and have come up with a plan for them in the same way, but it needs to be kind of a regulatory type striping. We don't want to put things out there that are going to get hit. Plungers are not the solution. We need to do it with regular devices. It just takes money to do that.
Right, understood. It takes money for the bollards, but, can of paint, a little planning internal. And that's another thing that we're asking you as well from a contractual standpoint, right? Shouldn't we not be staffed internal to Public Works to be able to do these quick tactical solutions that don't frankly require the engagement of Collier or Civic or otherwise to engineer a solution that takes time to go through a process? Like,
We did all the Porter Greenwood plans ourselves.
great, good to hear. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
I guess whatever information you've got on the enforcement, how you're doing it, but I think, I get the tweets as well about DeMontgomery Hill. I think there's a lot of, if you start talking to council members of hot spots they want to hit, everybody's got hot spots they want to hit. And we don't have enough enforcement as it is. So I think something, we face that on just about everything in Public Works and schools and codes and police is council, but it is a tough spot, I know. So we'll have that information next week, or not next week, but our next council meeting. So
Just as far as sharing the design solutions, right? And then additionally, the enforcement. Can you get that in 2 weeks, or is that, okay. Okay, thank you.
anything else? All right, we'll stand adjourned.